The endlessly twisting plot of Tower of God has finally brought us to its second season. At the end of the last season, the protagonist, Bam, was betrayed by his beloved Rachel, who pushed him into the abyss of the sea, hoping to replace him and gain everyone's love. However, Bam did not die. He met a red-haired woman who told him that he possesses the omnipotent key that knows everything in the world and could become the savior and god of the tower. She offered to train him to reach the top of the tower if he wanted to know everything, but Bam firmly refused. He decided to find the answers himself and knew he must climb the tower. Bam returns with a new identity as Viola. Yuri, one of the Jihad princesses and the first to appear this season, has now obtained 2 sacred weapons after retrieving the green April from the lizard woman. Upon returning home, she faces mocking remarks from her sister. After a brief exchange, Yuri meets another sister to seek help in finding Bam. Believing that the man she values would not die so easily, her sister agrees to help, but in exchange, she asks Yuri for a favor. The deal is struck. Meanwhile, Bam officially returns in another guise. This is the 20th floor of the tower, where selected members allowed into the tower are chosen again. If they pass the test, they can move forward, but the test is more difficult and comes with a high fee. Unknowingly, this floor has become a dumping ground for those who give up climbing. Here, the E-rank selection test, also known as the Bridge to Heaven, is held. Only a few can pass this nearly insurmountable wall. Echen, who has fallen to the 20th floor for various reasons, refuses to believe in curses and vows to pass the test and become the king of the tower. Predictably, he fails spectacularly. The man determined to be the king of the tower is defeated instantly. Extremely frustrated, Echen blames others even while bathing. Suddenly, the curtain is pulled back by his creditor coming to collect debts. With no money to pay, Echen tries to escape naked but is quickly caught and pressed into the bathtub. The creditor knows everything about him, including his failed test, and demands repayment of the exam fee with interest. Unable to repay even if he worked for 100 years, the creditor offers him another option: to participate in a full-body slimming beauty treatment, which is essentially organ trading. Ultimately, under duress, Echen signs his name. Just as the food I ordered earlier was delivered, the creditor uncle kindly paid for Echen. After all, Echen would repay him in full with his own efforts. At this moment, Echen was filled with regret. Had he known, he would have ordered his favorite sweet and sour pork. Now, he could only eat ramen here. The delivery girl had a similar story, burdened with debt from exam fees. However, the logo on the bracelet she wore suggested that her identity was not ordinary. After finishing the ramen, Echen returned the bowl. The delivery girl gave him a discount coupon, hoping he would pass his exams and order their ramen again, promising to sneak in an extra egg. Echen accepted her kindness and promised her that if he became the king of the tower, he would definitely open a top-notch ramen shop for her. Having eaten his fill, Echen went to take another test. The first round was a 30-minute survival game, with a new participant entering every 3 minutes, determined by drawing lots. After 30 minutes, those remaining would advance to the next round, akin to a battle royale. Echen clenched an explosive ball, ready to rush in as soon as the door opened. But before he could act, a burly man flew in through the door. Only one participant was still standing inside. Echen thought he was doomed again, but he couldn't afford to lose here, or he'd really have all his organs sold. So, he bravely approached the long-haired man, kindly suggesting he conserve his energy for the next round, and introduced himself in a friendly way. Unfortunately, Bam was no longer naive. Reborn as Viola, he did not accept Echen's kindness, nor did he attack him. Instead, he silently sat down by the wall, ignoring everything Echen said. As the next person was about to enter, Echen prepared to act, but unexpectedly, it was a large double-door refrigerator. Luckily, this person didn't seem aggressive. Then a little girl came in, and the four sat together, none wanting to fight. The fifth person was a big sister known to the fourth little girl, who had fallen for the double door at first sight. Seeing this, Echen was stunned. How different this was from the exams he had taken before. The little girl told the big sister not to worry, as everyone was nice. Unable to sit still any longer, Echen stood up to play the villain, even though everyone was peaceful. The big sister immediately protected the little girl, while Echen, veiled in his sarcasm, meant to say, Don't trust those around you too much. Watch out for betrayal. After all, he had seen too many cases where someone, lucky to have friends help to reach the 20th floor, was abandoned by his companions once he became useless, which made the little girl cry. The child actually wanted to climb the tower just to see his parents. The older sister quickly hugged her younger sister to comfort her while glaring at Etchen. The man with the double doors also silently expressed his dissatisfaction. At this moment, a combative young man, the last of their group, arrived. Seeing that the others had no intention of fighting, he thought they were conserving their energy. He turned to the older sister and the little sister, suggesting to the others that if the next round was a team battle, having women and children might be problematic. He proposed a vote to eliminate the two. Etchen immediately agreed, but said it wouldn't be them who were going out, but rather this energetic young man. The sisters raised their hands in agreement, while the man with the double doors remained silent. Then Bam spoke up, stating there was no need because all of them would be leaving. The energetic young man, feeling provoked, drew his weapon and pointed it at Bam, but Bam coolly deflected him, followed by an explosive blast that sent the young man reeling. As he prepared to continue the attack, the man with the double doors intervened, reminding Bam that no one on the 20th floor would be easily defeated, so he should stop the pointless fight. Bam replied that it wasn't a fight since he planned to eliminate them all. As the young man refused Bam's offer of peace, the man with the double doors prepared to fight, only to be preempted by the energetic young man, causing chaos. Bam and the man with the double doors clashed, with the young man joining in, not targeting Bam, but angering the man with the double doors. The two fought again, but Bam would not let the home field be dominated by others, charging with a lightning attack that blasted both away. Everyone then realized that Bam was a wave controller, and his badge bore the FUG logo, a force opposing Jihad and a major criminal organization. Etchen and the sisters were shocked. With 10 minutes left until the end of the first test, the energetic young man and the man with the double doors sensed danger and decided to team up. The young man said if the man with the double doors could immobilize the opponent, he could finish him off in one move. The man with the double doors charged, his massive body acting like a fortress. Bam's punches had no effect, and he was grabbed. Just then, the young man fired a light cannon from his spear, but in the next second, the man with the double doors was restrained, and Bam released divine water, not only neutralizing the light cannon, but also charging at the young man, ultimately slamming him against the wall. Next was the man with the double doors. With only 30 seconds left until the test ended, Etchen shouted for the others to scatter. As long as they could last until the countdown ended, they would enter the next exam. Unexpectedly, Bam first chased after Etchen, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him to the ground. Fortunately, Etchen reacted quickly, rolling away to dodge a punch. As he ran, he encouraged himself, "I must reach the top of the tower!" This statement stunned Bam for 2 seconds, reminding him of someone else who had shouted about reaching the top. During this moment of distraction, Etchen threw an explosive ball. Bam was hit and spat blood. A young man urged Etchen to press the attack, so Etchen threw another explosive ball. This time, Bam didn't dodge. However, when the smoke cleared, a red skeleton appeared on his back, protecting him. Meanwhile, the wounds on Bam's face healed quickly. Once fully recovered, the skeleton collapsed. Bam instantly dashed towards Etchen, but just as he was about to pierce Etchen's throat, the countdown ended. Etchen's life was spared, and the remaining people entered the next exam. Bam was the first to walk into the elevator, recalling how Kun had once reached out to him. Perhaps because Etchen had made the same gesture, he had spared him. Etchen narrowly escaped elimination in the first exam, and went with others to the second exam venue. Unexpectedly, they were among the first to arrive. 5 of them sat together, too intimidated to talk to Bam. At that moment, a little girl distributed chocolate bars, and a spirited young man gestured for one, but was ignored. Even she gave one to Bam, but not to him. Bam accepted the chocolate from the little girl, surprising everyone. The older sister couldn't understand why the girl would do something so risky. The little sister explained that their parents had told them to be kind to lonely children. This reminded Bam of his goddess, Rachel, who had once told him a story about someone who loved stars so much that they built a high tower to be closer to them, ignoring others' ridicule. Eventually, they reached the stars and could live with them forever. but Bam had asked if that person would feel lonely. Rachel thought they certainly would, as they could only interact with the stars, without family or friends, despite the joy of being with others. More people gradually arrived, including the one who had given Echen ramen and the fire-breathing woman who had eliminated him in the first round of the last exam. Unfortunately, she didn't remember him. Her headband indicated she was from the Yeon family, one of the 10 great families. It was unclear why such a lady would end up on the 20th floor. Echen then spotted an acquaintance, his creditor, who greeted him and pointed out a young master, the president's son, who had reached this floor through his father's influence. Not only had the father bribed the examiner, but he had also hired a group of mercenaries to protect his son. One of these mercenaries, a formidable man, had reportedly beaten Hats, known as the right-arm demon. The fire-breathing woman was also a bodyguard for the young master, having fallen into debt after failing the last exam. The creditor, seeing an opportunity with the young master's bodyguards, had signed up for this selection without hesitation. He came to warn Echen to prepare for elimination, as the young master planned to eliminate everyone in the next exam. Just as he left, the examiner appeared and explained the content of the second exam, a physical enhancement ability test using a divine water detector. After enhancing their bodies with divine water and touching the device, the screen would display their scores and rankings. The examiner would select 8 candidates based on this test. Upon hearing this, Echen felt utterly defeated. Competing in strength was not his forte. Yet, the first name the examiner called was his. Echen had no choice but to give his best punch, but the result was disappointing. The stronger competitors hadn't even taken their turns, and he was already ranked 10th. Echen felt frustrated but powerless. Meanwhile, the young master, bored, decided to stir up trouble by betting with his subordinates. Whoever won first place in the test could claim Yua. If Yua herself won, she would regain her freedom. Confident in her abilities, Yua accepted the challenge. As the noise escalated, Horyang tried to intervene, but was harshly rebuked by the young master. In response, he punched the device and instantly took the lead. However, the next contender, Kirin Arm, doubled his score. Yihua was next, and even after slipping, she broke Kirin Arm's record, doubling the score again. She thought she'd regain her freedom, but the young master surpassed her record next. Echen grew more frustrated as he watched, but Han couldn't help but laugh, reminding him that Bam hadn't gone yet. Bam merely touched the crystal ball, unleashing a formidable power that skyrocketed his score to 130,000. The examiner noticed the emblem on his clothing, and after all tests, called only Bam, the top scorer. Seeing the outcome was fixed, Echen lost all hope and began crying with a little girl. Unexpectedly, the examiner announced that instead of choosing the top 8, Bam could select the remaining 7 candidates. The young master was shocked. Echen, usually reluctant to rely on others, didn't want to give up. Before Bam could choose, he stood up, loudly introduced himself, and even knelt before Bam, promising to do anything, even bark like a dog. The others were stunned by his desperation. Even Han knelt down, shedding his cool demeanor and sharing a sad story about his waiting daughter. Echen stood up and accused him of lying. Then Horyang also knelt, needing to find someone important. The little girl hugged Bam, crying, and begging to be taken with him to see her parents. Amidst the chaos, Yihua, maintaining her dignity, suggested Bam select based on strength, ensuring her inclusion. Echen grew more anxious and began disparaging everyone. Unfortunately, his efforts were futile. Bam had already decided not to choose anyone and asked the examiner to eliminate everyone. The examiner reminded him that the next test required forming teams. Bam stated that no one there was fit to be his partner, and he refused to select anyone unqualified. Yua grew increasingly angry, thinking Bam was either a fraud or had a case of Shunabu. However, Bam was actually one of FUG's candidate assassins, tasked with killing Jaihead and his family, which is why he couldn't team up with them. The examiner, unwilling to give up, challenged Bam to a game. If Bam won, he could participate in the next test alone. If the examiner won, Bam would have to choose teammates according to the rules. Thus, the second test was temporarily stalled, and all candidates were sent to rest. Echen and the delivery girl happened to be in the same room, while Bam and Yihua shared another. Yihua mistakenly thought Bam was a girl and, not wanting to be left out, awkwardly tried to befriend him by inviting him to bathe together. Bam got up to go with her, but entered the men's bath, shocking Yihua so much that she dropped her clothes. Inside, Echen was searching for something and was surprised to find the ring with G-Head's emblem in Bam's possession, who claimed to have found it on the floor. Echen tried to bluff his way through the encounter, but Bam simply returned the ring to him without further comment. Meanwhile, the examiner met with the chief examiner and refused to change his decision, insisting that Fug must be executed. Echen is sharing a room with a girl, and yet he's bored. He can't fall asleep so early. The delivery girl then pulls out a small box from the drawer. Meanwhile, in the supervisor's examination room, the chief examiner reminds the other examiners not to let personal grievances affect their treatment of Bam, a member of the Fug organization. However, the stubborn young boy refuses to listen, even as his chubby face is nearly pulled off. Things aren't calm in Bam and Yihua's room either. Yihua has discovered that Bam is a boy and is now worried he might make unwelcome advances. Bam straightforwardly states, "I am not interested in your body," which only makes Yihua angrier. Back with Echen, he calls Han and Horyang together and plans to invite Mana and Goseng to play a card game. Just then, Mana is offered candy by an elderly lady, whom Han suspects of not being trustworthy. After questioning her sternly, the lady, who says she works at an orphanage and took a liking to Mana, is frightened away by Han's demand to keep her hands off Mana and leave. Han then warns Mana not to eat the candy from the stranger, though he himself does not appear trustworthy, having previously mentioned eliminating women first. Terrified, Mana starts to cry, just as Goseng returns with drinks, and they all go to play cards in the room. After a few games, Mana and Horyang go to sleep, but the others continue playing. Goseng can't help but feel that leaving together and living happily could be a possibility, a thought that resonates with everyone. Later that night, Echen confides in Nia that they must pass the exam to enjoy sweet and sour pork using the coupon Nia had given him. Just as they try to sleep, the communicator in the room goes off. The examiner announces that the exam starts now. The next exam is called the Trustworthy Room. The task involves ensuring more than 7 teammates and 6 rooms. Each room must appoint a leader and a gatekeeper using a remote control. The leader can enhance the team's ability to seize rooms. Any teammate or room seized will be transferred to the leader, while the room's ownership goes to the gatekeeper. Rooms can only be seized from the gatekeeper. Leaders may also transfer ownership of a seized room to another teammate, appointing them as the new gatekeeper. A leader cannot also be a gatekeeper. Adding teammates and seizing rooms are controlled through the remote, which also has the functions to lock and unlock the room. It can only be used inside the room and cannot be taken outside, meaning at least one team member must always be present. Also, the 6th room must be room 608, which is Bam and Yihua's room. The team that first acquires more than 7 teammates and 6 rooms will be the winner of this exam. These are the rules for the contestants. However, Bam is an exception. His connector is in the hands of the examiner, which means his room's connector also serves as both leader and gatekeeper. If Bam wants to win, he must snatch the connector from the examiner and take the room from Yihua. However, there is another way. If the number of contestants drops below 7, Bam automatically wins. After the examiner explains the rules, the exam begins immediately. Contestants in each room begin to strategize. Goseng and Mana, being the weakest team, plan to form alliances with others. Goseng leaves Mana in the room, instructing her not to open the door for anyone but him, then goes out to find allies. The young master is paired with his strongest bodyguard, but he does not trust him. When hiding the remote, he specifically asks the bodyguard to close his eyes and leaves him to open the door. Meanwhile, Yihua, holding the remote, confronts Bam. She does not understand Bam's choice. She believes that if they simply followed the examiner's directive to select 7 people to advance, there wouldn't be so many complications. However, Bam argues that not everyone can be happy, only certain individuals can be. After saying this, he asks Yihua to give him the remote. Naturally, Yihua is not willing to hand it over so easily, but before she can use her powerful move, she is immobilized. Bam takes the remote and leaves the room. As soon as he opens the door, he encounters the young master, who is also immobilized before he can finish his harsh words. Bam doesn't even bother to engage with him. Han and Horyang are deciding who should be the leader and who the gatekeeper. Ultimately, Horyang steps back, knowing Han is worried about Mana, and lets him do what he wants. Han initially does not want to accept this kindness, but when he hears noises from Mana's room, he immediately rushes over, telling Mana to open the door and assuring her that he is not there to take the room. However, there is no response inside, and he becomes frantic, banging on the door, haunted by memories of his daughter being taken away. Could he be experiencing the same feeling again? Fortunately, Mana finally speaks up. She has been hiding under the covers, terrified because her sister had instructed her never to open the door to anyone, including the lady who came earlier. Han is somewhat relieved by this, but when Mana says he is even worse than the lady, he is angered, remembering how he entered the exam intending to eliminate Mana and Goseng, looking fierce. Mana's parents had told her to stay away from such vicious people, but she is too scared and hopes Han will stay outside with her. Surprisingly, Han agrees, despite complaining about why such a frightened girl would even attempt to climb the tower. Mana brought up her parents again, saying that they told her climbing the tower would make someone great. She then questioned Han about his reasons for climbing. Before Han could respond, the old lady reappeared, saw Han about to attack her, and quickly clarified she meant no harm. She even invited Han to collaborate with her to ambush others passing by, revealing her true nature. After all, how could someone who spoke of reducing the misfortunes of others wear so many lavish rings? They soon started fighting. Mana, overhearing the commotion outside, became even more frightened. Meanwhile, Echen and Nia were hiding in their room until Goseng came to find them. He gave them his connector as a sign of his commitment to forming an alliance. Goseng knew he was only there by luck and lacked true strength. He had even planned to give up this time. However, after meeting Echen, he changed his mind, wanting to climb the tower together and entrust his fate to Echen. Echen was surprised to find himself becoming someone else's belief. The three of them chatted amicably in the room while the young master, freed from immobilization, cursed as he moved to another room, but was stopped by Echen's creditor, who mentioned that he had just seen the bodyguard dead. Echen then returned to their room with Goseng. At the entrance, Han had the old lady tightly bound and was playing word games with Mana inside. With Goseng's return, Mana felt safe to open the door. It seemed they had no choice but to team up. They discussed what actions Bam might take. Han believed Bam would directly confront the examiner. Goseng mentioned seeing Bam in the corridor earlier, while the young master insisted that Bam had killed his bodyguard and was set on seeking revenge. At that moment, two strangers burst into their room, offering to become the young master's companions. At the same time, Bam, as expected, arrived in front of the examiner. The examiner, aware of the intelligence from F-Yug, revealed that Galaga, who had recently become an assassin, was taking the test with a special mission from F-Yug. The mission was to kill specific candidates during the test, and to either help one of these candidates pass or eliminate all other candidates, ensuring only his own qualification. Such actions disregarded the rules of the test, prompting the examiner to vow to eliminate them all. However, he was willing to give Bam an opportunity and demonstrated a device nearby. Bam was to catch a connector launched by a pitching machine before it could be intercepted by a glove on the other side. He would be given only 3 chances. If he failed to catch it even once, he would be directly eliminated. If he quit midway, he would be allowed to join the subsequent tests alongside the winners. During this, the examiner would interfere and might even accidentally kill him. Nevertheless, Bam insisted on taking the test. Soon, the connector was launched. Bam immediately immobilized it and was about to grab it when the examiner rushed up and kicked the connector away. Then came the second ball. As soon as the examiner shouted, "Pitch," he took off. Bam quickly followed and managed to immobilize the examiner for a moment during his counterattack, preventing him from landing a hit. However, the examiner's strength was not to be underestimated. His powerful punch was too much for Bam to withstand, sending him flying back. Then, standing over him, the examiner said condescendingly, "It seems you trust yourself too much. Why does the junior examiner hate Fug so much? It's because his parents were killed by this organization. So now, he is essentially taking personal revenge." He asked Bam why he joined Fug, and Bam replied that there's someone he wants to meet at the top. Whether it's for revenge or not, he won't know until he meets them. Meanwhile, Yiwa is alone in her room when someone claiming to be from the young master's subordinate knocks on her door. As soon as she opens it, the person takes over her body. After hearing Lurker's words, the young master returns to his room to check the situation, but is ambushed by a bodyguard pretending to be dead. It turns out the bodyguard and Lurker had been secretly collaborating, planning to take this opportunity to kill the young master. Elsewhere, Echen and his team have seized 5 rooms. All they need to do now is take Bam and Yihua's rooms to win. Before setting out, Echen calls Nia, who stayed in the room, but hears Lurker's voice instead. Nia betrays Echen, opening the door for Lurker. She did this out of desperation, just to protect someone. When she first came to the 20th floor, she was abandoned by her tower-climbing companions and was taken in by an elderly woman. Since then, Nia decided to stay and help the grandmother. But since Lurker and his group arrived, they haven't had a day of peace. Lurker told her that eliminating other candidates could erase her debts. Lurker was resolved to help the grandmother, but meeting Echen gave her the idea of climbing the tower again. Yet she could never leave the grandmother behind and had to make this choice. Nia cries and apologizes to Echen, who knows she is fighting to protect someone important to her and doesn't blame her, even calling her a true hero. But then, Lurker says he can't pay off the debt to the shop because the young master is too annoying. He plans to kill the young master and take over himself. Nia is heartbroken, wondering what her betrayal was for. Angered, Nia rushes at Lurker, trying to take the remote control from him, not knowing that Lurker never intended to spare her life. Echen listens to the sound of a fierce beating, hearing Lurker lament, "Finally, she's dead," as only a large pool of blood remains on the room's carpet. Echen is filled with rage and hatred, vowing to kill this beast. Lurker doesn't care, considering Echen's rage as impotent fury, especially since they now have 7 companions. Soon, the young master's room will also be theirs, and Yiwa's room is already in their hands. Lurker declares from a high position, "You're finished." However, Echen seems to have thought of something and says, "It's not over yet," before running out. Horyang guesses he's going to find Bam, the demon. They should use this time to rescue the young master and disrupt Lurker's plans. At this moment, Bam was still battling the junior examiner. There was only one chance left with the last ball. As soon as the remote control was launched, the examiner sped toward it on his divine water skateboard. Mimicking him, Bam used the divine water to flip in the air and instantly reappeared in front of the examiner, throwing a punch. The examiner quickly raised his arms to block, but the next second, Bam replicated a move he had used earlier. Just as the examiner was about to be overwhelmed, he grabbed Bam's wrist, immobilizing him and moved behind him. He was about to pick up the remote control from the ground when Echen called out to him. Echen also threw an explosive ball, blasting the remote control toward himself, seizing the initiative. Echen immediately asked Bam for help, declaring himself the worst of villains, and proposed they together teach a lesson to those half-baked evils. If Bam agreed to help him, he would return the remote control. The examiner tried to snatch it, but heard Echen reveal that the guy had killed Nia. It turns out Echen too had been abandoned, initially having many companions, only to end up alone eating sweet and sour pork. Feeling lonely and scared at that time, he had finally found a companion to share the meal with, but then, tearfully, Echen asked the examiner whether the tower was built to fulfill wishes or to abandon them. Regardless, he could not let those who trample on others' lives go unpunished, even if it meant allying with demons. Echen once again invited Bam to join him. Meanwhile, the young master was being brutally beaten by a bodyguard and realized he had been betrayed. Just then, Lurker returned, holding Yiwa hostage, and ordered the bodyguard to kill the young master. Horyang intervened, knocking down another bodyguard beside Lurker. Lurker then commanded Yiwa to burn Horyang alive. Horyang resisted and was about to unleash his power when Bam rushed over, declaring his lack of interest in Yiwa's body. He then pulled a green substance from her mouth, which had been controlling her body, and destroyed it with a punch. Sensing danger, Lurker ordered the inside bodyguard to kill the young master immediately. Fortunately, just in time, Horyang stepped in, demonstrating the true power of the Kirin arm sealed in his right hand, a demon's power. Horyang annihilated the bodyguard, causing the young master to exclaim in admiration, calling him Lord Demon. Bam and Echen also caught up with Lurker. Seeing the situation turn dire, Lurker's remaining teammate immediately abandoned him. Lurker then questioned Achen, asking if he brought Bam along to die together. As he raised his arm, Achen kicked it fiercely. Achen had already noticed that Lurker was manipulating the divine water using a water tank in his pocket, and he told Lurker that he was now receiving his punishment. Achen then stomped hard on his arm, stating this was not his revenge, but vengeance for those tortured by Lurker, including Nia. Achen conjured a weapon from the divine water. Realizing he could not escape, Lurker laughed, questioning the difference between murder and justice, claiming they were all justifying their actions in the name of revenge or divine retribution. Achen shouted that he was nothing like Lurker, who retorted that it was all the fault of the damn president. Lurker shared that, like Achen, he had borrowed money to climb the tower and had accrued a massive debt, forcing him to abandon his climb and take this conscience-straining job. The president had asked him to guard his son, who was about to climb the tower, and Lurker was infuriated by the president's manipulation of dreams and talk of love. But he had realized that this tower was inherently unreasonable. Kill or be killed. After hearing this, Achen became even angrier. Was it for such reasons that Lurker killed innocent Nia? Yet he ultimately could not bring himself to kill Lurker, as doing so would only perpetuate the tower's irrationality. Thus, he chose to forgive, which unexpectedly broke Lurker's composure. "Why do you forgive me?" Achen declared that he would change the tower himself, aiming to become the king of the tower and change everything that made it irrational. He urged Lurker to live well for Nia's sake, then handed the remote control to Bam. The broadcast immediately announced the exam's passers, excluding Bam and Achen's group, which included Yiwa and the young master, totaling 8 people. As soon as the exam ended, the junior examiner apologized to the chief examiner, who did not blame him. Since the boy was safe and had found companions, he treated this exam as the final one and urged them to move on quickly. He also advised the junior examiner to let go of his grudge against FUG, suggesting they could share a meal of fried chicken. After the junior examiner left, he immediately reported to the higher-ups that the prince had passed their test, as FUG wished. The exam outcome was a cause for celebration. That evening, Bam sought out Achen to ask why he had forgiven that man. Achen replied that he probably sought forgiveness himself, as he was no different from Lurker, having deceived others for the sake of climbing the tower. Achen admitted that he might kill more people in his quest to climb the tower, and his goal was not noble, merely to make the tower a place where everyone could laugh under the same roof. For this, he needed Bam's help, which Bam agreed to, adding that it was because it was the rule. The next morning, Bam looked up at the sky, where his former companions awaited him. Achen is sharing a room with a girl, and yet he's bored. He can't fall asleep so early. The delivery girl then pulls out a small box from the drawer. Meanwhile, in the supervisor's examination room, the chief examiner reminds the other examiners not to let personal grievances affect their treatment of Bam, a member of the FUG organization. However, the stubborn young boy refuses to listen, even as his chubby face is nearly pulled off. Things aren't calm in Bam and Yihua's room either. Yihua has discovered that Bam is a boy and is now worried he might make unwelcome advances. Bam straightforwardly states, "I am not interested in your body," which only makes Yihua angrier. Back with Achen, he calls Han and Horyang together and plans to invite Mana and Goseng to play a card game. Just then, Mana is offered candy by an elderly lady, whom Han suspects of not being trustworthy. After questioning her sternly, the lady, who says she works at an orphanage and took a liking to Mana, is frightened away by Han's demand to keep her hands off Mana and leave. Han then warns Mana not to eat the candy from the stranger, though he himself does not appear trustworthy, having previously mentioned eliminating women first. Terrified, Mana starts to cry, just as Goseng returns with drinks, and they all go to play cards in the room. After a few games, Mana and Horyang go to sleep, but the others continue playing. Goseng can't help but feel that leaving together and living happily could be a possibility, a thought that resonates with everyone. Later that night, Achen confides in Nia that they must pass the exam to enjoy sweet and sour pork using the coupon Nia had given him. Just as they try to sleep, the communicator in the room goes off. The examiner announces that the exam starts now. The next exam is called the Trustworthy Room. The task involves ensuring more than 7 teammates and 6 rooms. Each room must appoint a leader and a gatekeeper using a remote control. The leader can enhance the team's ability to seize rooms. Any teammate or room seized will be transferred to the leader, while the room's ownership goes to the gatekeeper. Rooms can only be seized from the gatekeeper. Leaders may also transfer ownership of a seized room to another teammate, appointing them as the new gatekeeper. A leader cannot also be a gatekeeper. Adding teammates and seizing rooms are controlled through the remote, which also has the functions to lock and unlock the room. It can only be used inside the room and cannot be taken outside, meaning at least one team member must always be present. Also, the 6th room must be room 608, which is Bam and Yiwa's room. The team that first acquires more than 7 teammates and 6 rooms will be the winner of this exam. These are the rules for the contestants. However, Bam is an exception. His connector is in the hands of the examiner, which means his room's connector also serves as both leader and gatekeeper. If Bam wants to win, he must snatch the connector from the examiner and take the room from Yiwa. However, there is another way. If the number of contestants drops below 7, Bam automatically wins. After the examiner explains the rules, the exam begins immediately. Contestants in each room begin to strategize. Goseng and Mana, being the weakest team, plan to form alliances with others. Goseng leaves Mana in the room, instructing her not to open the door for anyone but him, then goes out to find allies. The young master is paired with his strongest bodyguard, but he does not trust him. When hiding the remote, he specifically asks the bodyguard to close his eyes and leaves him to open the door. Meanwhile, Yihua, holding the remote, confronts Bam. She does not understand Bam's choice. She believes that if they simply followed the examiner's directive to select 7 people to advance, there wouldn't be so many complications. However, Bam argues that not everyone can be happy, only certain individuals can be. After saying this, he asks Yiwa to give him the remote. Naturally, Yiwa is not willing to hand it over so easily, but before she can use her powerful move, she is immobilized. Bam takes the remote and leaves the room. As soon as he opens the door, he encounters the young master, who is also immobilized before he can finish his harsh words. Bam doesn't even bother to engage with him. Han and Horyang are deciding who should be the leader and who the gatekeeper. Ultimately, Horyang steps back, knowing Han is worried about Mana, and lets him do what he wants. Han initially does not want to accept this kindness, but when he hears noises from Mana's room, he immediately rushes over, telling Mana to open the door and assuring her that he is not there to take the room. However, there is no response inside, and he becomes frantic, banging on the door, haunted by memories of his daughter being taken away. Could he be experiencing the same feeling again? Fortunately, Mana finally speaks up. She has been hiding under the covers, terrified because her sister had instructed her never to open the door to anyone, including the lady who came earlier. Han is somewhat relieved by this, but when Mana says he is even worse than the lady, he is angered, remembering how he entered the exam intending to eliminate Mana and Goseng, looking fierce. Mana's parents had told her to stay away from such vicious people, but she is too scared and hopes Han will stay outside with her. Surprisingly, Han agrees, despite complaining about why such a frightened girl would even attempt to climb the tower. Mana brought up her parents again, saying that they told her climbing the tower would make someone great. She then questioned Han.